Welcome to Brave with Lisa YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Bruton and my goal is to inspire you to live bravely in that unique rhythm of grace that God has designed just for you. On this channel, we are going to be hearing from amazing people from all different walks of life who are bravely walking in that unique rhythm of grace and calling that God has designed just for them. I know that as we hear their stories, we are going to learn a lot. We're going to find keys that are going to help us to also walk bravely in that unique rhythm of grace and that unique calling that God has just for you and for me. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, welcome to Brave with Lisa YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Bruton and today I have the gorgeous Jenny with me. She's absolutely fabulous. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with her and getting under the layer of, or the surface of who Jen is. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. I'm like a words of affirmation gal. So that just hit me really. I was like, yeah, sweet. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Jenny, I know you're over in Kenya at the moment, and actually I have trouble keeping up as to where you are in the world, but can you share with us about who you are, what you're passionate about, and why are you in Kenya?
Yeah, for sure. So Kenya has been my home for the last 10 years. So I'm originally from the United States, and from Texas, and a lot of people, when I go back to the States with our family, they're like, "Oh, you're going home." And I'm always like, no, like Kenya is definitely where my roots are, but I am going to visit family, so I always feel a little displaced actually when I go back home or to see family, to the United States. But yes, and all of last year I was just all over the place. I was like in 40 different states. So you were always like, where are you in the world? But yeah, so I started actually going to Kenya in 2009, and it really hit like this wanderlust spirit of mine. So Kenya in the beginning, although I went on a mission trip, it was more this selfish trip of experience and wanting to check a box basically of like, I have gone overseas. And what was beautiful about that is the Lord completely disrupted that and was like, let's flip the narrative because this is not about you. And I just remember I was talking to someone the other day reflecting on my first trip, and I remember this like very big contrast that was just happening daily, and I journaled about it. And so this was now 13 years ago. And so I remember going out into the villages and working with the church we kind of were with, and we were doing working in a school and, just helping with actually like a vacation Bible school and just being there, right? Just being present. I think if you guys have ever been on some type of service trip or mission trip, we kind of get out of our comfort zones and whatnot. And I could go in a whole other podcast about how I like to break that down now. But what I'll say is what I realized, we were going out there and I was like, for the first time, obviously being, seeing things I've never seen before. And I always acknowledge, I have come from a place of privilege and I came from a really good upbringing. And so this was a side of poverty I've never seen before, even though it's in my backyard too, in the United States. I just had never been there, and my parents had never exposed me to something like this. And so we would be out there and there's the joy that would outpour into the communities. And then we would leave, right? We would leave the village and we'd go to like a really nice hotel and have like a buffet and be like AC rooms, because it's really hot in Mombasa. And I felt guilty, I felt this like sense of like, whoa, there's this disparity here. And although that is how most like trips are ran and there's this sense of like security and safety, especially if you've never been over. So there's a reason for that. But as my young 18-year-old self, I was like, what is, like what's going on here? And I didn't realize what was happening in my heart from the beginning. To me, again, it was still just check off the list. And so I traveled a lot over those following years. But the Lord just kept bringing me back to Kenya every year. Cause I was like, I'm never coming back to this place. And I feel like anytime you say something out loud and you like pronounce it, the Lord's like, you know this. The Lord's like, watch me. Like and so the fact that this is home to me and I love it just is mind blowing to me. But so I kept coming back, and again, just really wanted to make sure I was radically listening to what was happening and not putting my own preconceived notions of what I thought needed to happen in these communities. Because again, I had no background, and I knew I just needed to be at a place of learning and being teachable. I would say I now know that as a mature adult. Then I had no idea that that's what I was processing. But what I found is I would go to the same village, worked in Mtipini village, and it was with these same women. And it was just the same thing. I would come back a year and I'm like seeing them in the same, just the same situation, and their kids are being sent back from school and all these different things. And I was like, well, who is empowering this group? I think for me, I was seeing specifically the area I was working in, the kids being empowered and all this, and all of these medical stuff coming in and all of this aid. But I was like, this isn't a long-term solution. Like, who's empowering them to take care of their families? And so I started sitting down with these women, and they became dear friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I realized too, is I was the only one that kept coming back. So with mission trips and things, people promise a lot, right? Like they have this experience and then they're like, hey, I'm going to come back. I'm going to see you. The reality is about 98% of those people never come back and see and go back into that community. And that's what they kept saying. They're like, you're the one that always keeps coming back. Like you say you're going to come back and you keep coming back. And I was like, huh, okay. Yeah. And I was starting to, see that. And then I was just, I was really starting to see the desire of their heart. So I know the Lord, didn't gift me. People often ask, why did you start Imani Collective? And for y'all listening and you don't know what that is, Imani Collective started as a training program. I sold everything. So eventually the Lord kept pursuing me. I sold everything and I moved to Kenya in 2013. And I started with this group of women, these 16 women, and we started a training program on sewing and tailoring. I have no background in sewing and tailoring. So most people are like, you're a designer or you do. And I'm like, no, I don't. I just knew that I knew how to organize stuff. I knew how to get the right people together, and I knew how to lead. Like that's my background, and that's what the Lord has gifted me. And so I was like, I can still use those skill sets and get the right people together. And so brought on tailors, Kenya tailors, who had the skill to be the instructor, because my goal was never to be the white person coming in to save either, like to really deconstruct that. My goal was to empower communities to lead. And if I ever leave, like they would be okay. And in fact, I could have left like 5 years ago. People are like, why are you still there? I'm like, because it's my home. But my team is so awesome. Like they run the show now. And so now we've grown into, a growing social enterprise that, I guess yesterday we did the count. We have 124 people now, on our salary and payroll. And so, to me, that is just really cool, because it was God pursued me the whole way, saw my talents, and then brought me here. So that's kind of like long story short, a little bit of me being here. And in the midst of all that, I met my husband here, doing some other work. And so I am a mother of 3 beautiful children now. And so I keep busy. Yeah.
That would keep you very busy.
Yes.
Jenny, can I take you back even a little bit in your story as to like that point where or even before that, when you had the idea to begin Imani Collective? How did that come about? I know you're starting to see a need and you wanted to support, the mums and whatnot and your friends, but how did that idea come about?
Yeah. So originally I came, so when I came on my second trip, I came for about a month long, and I was working with a couple who had started an organization. And they specifically were doing kids sponsorships and, have medical aid, and really developing this beautiful school that was grounded in Christian biblical truths, and they would teach that as well. So really beautiful vision. But the the way they were doing their sponsorships was when you sponsor a child, it provided for their books, it provided for everything, all that extra care, but it did not provide for the tuition, which was about $1 or $2 for the kid. And the reason being is they wanted to keep the community still accountable for paying, but also the salary, or like the payment coming in for that kids, would help with the salaries for the teachers, so they were creating this model where it wasn't development aid where it was hindering, but it was also keeping the community accountable. So I loved all that, and I loved the idea of that. But as I was building these child sponsors, I was helping them build the profiles for the kids to get that external sponsorships. And as I was doing that, I would go and I would do these home visits, and this is where I was seeing that there were kids that were sponsored, but were being sent home every month because the tuition wasn't being paid. So then I was like, okay, well, this is weird. Like, these people in the States think they're being sponsored, but then they're not getting that education they need because they're coming from homes of single, widow, disabled women who can't provide that. So I'm like, where is that solution? So I kept kind of pushing into that narrative. And the answer I kept getting from them was, well, that's their responsibility, right? That's their responsibility. Now, as I've grown and now also in academia have like a background in it, it's like there's these two different things of economic aid and social aid. And so what they were providing was social aid. But if you only provide one thing and you don't provide the other, there's this like distorted development that's happening. And that's what was happening. It's like, well, they just saw it as their kids are getting some education and then being sent home, like in the middle of the month. And it never bothered them because no one ever asked them and the parents what they felt about education. And the reality at that time is they didn't see a value in it because they never had the chance to get it. And they saw the value of their kids being home, helping on the farms and putting food on the table. And I was like, whoa, like I love education. The fact that they didn't get the opportunity to have it just like broke my heart.
Yeah.
And them being women and being in their 30s, they felt like it was too late for them. Like they had given up on themselves of like society, like has already put me in this box and it's too late for me. And I was like, no, like I wanted to fight against all of that because as we know, as mothers and leaders in our family, like if you can change a woman's life, and we also have men in our cooperative now. So I also love working with fathers and what that looks like, but mothers and women, they give more, they make sure their kids are taken care of, there's this nurturing spirit. And if you can change that and you can grow a woman's self-confidence, I think that it's not the dignified work we've provided and the consistent paychecks that, to me, that's been like the coolest part. The coolest part to me is seeing the change in the women and their self-confidence, like, and their self-efficacy grow. And like over the last 10 years, it has been mind blowing to see them. And then that impacts their kids because their kids are seeing their mom be proud of what they do. And that, overflows. So I would say it started with this disparity in development and what was happening. And although there's good stuff that happens and aid that happens, there's always another side of the story that it's hurting, if we're not paying attention to that.
Oh, well done for just pursuing and, going after what you saw that just wasn't quite lining up. So tell me, Jenny, you said that, there just wasn't a value on education at the time because it was better to have them home helping put food on the table. So how was that transition from that into what you brought in?
Rocky. I always so I coach a lot of social entrepreneurs now, and my biggest advice to them is be patient with the process. Like, especially coming from a Western view, like we see a project or a task and we have a timeline and evaluation, monitoring, whatever that might look like. We're like, we're going to get it done in this time. And something that I thought that I could do in 6 months, took years, and even starting, it took years actually even starting of developing relationships. So I'm like, first you have to go in and listen to a community, see if that need is even there, right? And radically listen to what's happening. And then you need to start relationships, and then you need to start. So my biggest pushback was structure. So I wanted to create something that, you need to come, like, we're going to train you, you're getting a stipend for training. And then now, it's developed into a full blown company where they have hours and whatnot and salaries. But it was getting them to understand that, like, hey, like, when we start at 10, we start at 10, not like noon, it's just the cultural tendency of understanding and keeping time. But then asking, like, why you're not keeping time. Most of the time it's just because people don't have watches. Like, I don't know what time it is. I'm just showing up when I think is around the time. And like, it just is like, oh yeah, like, okay, well, how can we fix that? So I think just even the little things like that, especially for anybody starting something similar, those can be over time really frustrating and almost like really just get your spirit down of just like, and then it's this cultural thing, right? It's because if they're not showing up on time, it's like, well, then they're not respecting or actually caring for what we're trying to provide here. But the reality is that wasn't it at all, because they were all super excited about it. It was just learning how to speak one another's culture. And so me 10 years ago, very impatient. Me now, very like, oh, okay, chill, like patient. So I always wonder if I could pull my past self to now, how I would interact with myself. Cause I think it'd be a very interesting interaction. I'd be like, what's up with this girl? She's like so uptight. Because I was just like, always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? But I think learning to slow down a bit and understand that really true transformation takes time. I think people want it in an instant, and that's, in anything in life, we want it in an instant. But when we look at the long term of even our personal life and our testimony and transformation, like that's just taken years. So we have to apply that to, things like this as well. It's not an overnight thing, and it never should be. We don't want that transactional thing happening. We really want a transformational experience for what we're doing,
Yeah, that I can so hear what you're saying. So you were saying when you first started, you're quite obviously you start with zeal and excitement as well, right? So that's all wrapped up in, and you're not sure how it's going to go, but you can see where it can go and what can happen. And so how did you find the rhythm where you're in now, which is patient, and you can tell that you go on the rhythm that God has given you?
Yeah, I think, I think trusting the process, but also finding time. I was talking to someone the other day about solitude and prayer. Like, I think when, especially entrepreneurs, whether you're doing something with a cause or you're dealing, with a marginalized, not dealing, but you're working with marginalized people groups, like, it's hard work, and it's a long, like, process. They say a business, normally a startup business, takes 3 to 5 years to get going. And then they say social enterprise normally takes 8 to 10 years. So we're on our 9th year, and last year was our first like break even profitable year. So it's very true. So if you are on that process, I'm like, hang in there. It is a long process, but it's, like, how can we sustain our energy through that? How can we find those new rhythms? And I think if I would have never had the moments where I pulled myself out and had solitude with God, I would not be where I am today. So like in 2016, I had like worst burnout. Like, I was going to shut the doors of Imani, which is just so sad to even think that could have happened. But I told my husband, I was like, I have to have solitude. And at that time, there was this beautiful retreat happening with my friend Christina had started it, called Azmira, and they were doing it in Israel. And I was like, well, this is a cool place to go. Like, let's just go. And at that time I had my first son, and he was 4 months old. So I own my only one baby, but 4 months old. So Sean was so sweet. My husband, he played daddy daycare basically in the hotel, while I got to be part of this fellowship with women. And the reality of that retreat, it was so life-changing for me, because I'd never gone. And I love that I'm speaking to you, because the power of retreats. But for me, I had never gone to anything like that. Like I never cared for myself. Like I couldn't, it almost brings me to tears because I'm like, at that time I was 26 years old and I never done anything for myself and like even centered myself around that. And I was like, whoa, this is like crazy. And so, and I don't even remember anybody there because there was this one room that they had set up because I wasn't really using it for fellowship this retreat. I was using it to connect back to God. And so there was this one room, they called it like the quiet room where you could go in and pray and just be alone. And anytime we weren't in session, like I was in that room. Like, so I spent lots of time in this one hotel room, just like giving it to God of like, what do you want and what's next? And so, and then that's when we went into our whole rebrand and really launched after that because I just had this sense of clarity from him. And so I think from that moment, I always was like, no matter what, like I can't get caught up in, yes, I'm a visionary and I want this stuff to happen, but the overwhelmingness of just like need and desperation and working in a business like this is so much for one person to handle. We're not meant to handle that. And I was trying to do it all. And so I think for now, me and finding the rhythms is understanding that I need to have the rest, I need to have the solitude, and I need to trust my team. And I think once I really delegated and took off all those hats and trusted my team and found the right partners in that, like, you know, that really changed. But it all goes down to prayer. Like if anything, if I'm not grounded in prayer and I'm not grounded in who we are, like then we'll lose sight of where we're going. And fun fact, Imani, Imani, Imani means faith in Swahili. And so when we rebranded in 2017, our full name, guys, this was a mouthful. Our full name used to be Imani Tumaini Upendo, which means faith, hope, love. No one knew where to write a donation check. They were like, how do I spell this? It was a mess. So when we rebranded, I told my partner, Haley, at that time, I was like, the only thing we can't do is take Imani out of the name. I said, because it has been a faith journey, like God has led us, and that will always be our foundation. And that's how we came to be Imani Collective. So it was like, we use our other Tumaini and Upendo in other ways in our verbiage and our outreach programs we run, but like that's where it started. And so I think for me, it's like really understanding if I feel that tension, if I feel that stress, like when was the last time I brought God into the conversation? You know, when was the last time he was really part of what I'm doing instead of me trying to do it?
And how key is that too? And I think so many people could relate to what you just shared, you know, not taking time out. And I think, well, I've seen it and I've done it too, is that when life gets really busy, the first thing that you let go of is time for yourself or the fun side of life. And actually, it's something that keeps the essence of who we are when we're able to take that time out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So what's some indications for you as to when you need to have that time out?
I have triggers. So I actually reevaluated this last year because my word for this year is realign. In like where am I spending my time and what am I doing? How am I realigning where my priorities are right? Being on the road last year. So we were on the road for 8 months in an RV. We were up in Alaska, we were in Texas, we were in all those different states. Like I was finishing my doctoral dissertation on the road while juggling 3 kids. Like it was a beautiful mess. I'll say it's a beautiful mess. Like it was awesome to wake up and like and be in beautiful places, but it was a lot. And this year I'm just like, yes, I'm like back to being grounded and routine. And I really needed that. I think when you're out of routine for so long, you try to make those little routines, but that's, you know, can be really hard. And so for me, realign. And I realized my biggest trigger points is when I overbook myself. Like if I notice that I'm being impatient, screaming at my children, or like whatever that looks like, I'm like, let's look at the calendar and why am I feeling this way? Because I have control over this. And so really finding those block moments where I can be present. I was like, I don't want my kids to think and always remember mom running to the next meeting or being busy or her work being put before us, you know, like I don't want them to think that. And so how can I be really cognizant of that, of like putting my phone away, really blocking that 4 to 7:30 time in the evening where people can't schedule meetings there, things like that. So I'm just fully present with them. And so when I do notice, a lot of the times it starts with just having trouble sleeping, but also just like feeling that anxious. And if I can just slightly feel it, then I'm like, okay, where have my rhythms been? And normally it's because I haven't, yes, been grounded in truth, been in prayer, and I've decided, oh, well, it's okay, I'm going to schedule that one extra meeting. But the problem with that is it's like we get into that rhythm. It's like, oh, it's okay, I'll schedule it. And then guess what? It happens the week after and the week after. And the time that we were supposed to honor has now been several months that we haven't been honoring. And that will catch up to us when we don't make that time for solitude. So for instance, also Thursday, I like never schedule meetings Thursday because that's my husband and I, it's our date night. And so it's like, no matter what, like that is our time and I'm not going to schedule over that. And no matter how important that meeting might be, I've already been tempted this year. That's how hard it is. I'm like, oh, I need to really have this meeting, but being like, nope, it's going to have to wait till next week. So, yeah.
So really good boundaries with your time as well sounds so key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then just finding ways, right? I think because as much as I want to say, oh, I'm not going to have another like episode of burnout, I think there will always be times where we're close to it. It's just what you're saying, right? Recognizing, like not letting yourself get to that because you recognize the signs early. And so I think, yes, it's boundaries. It's also just finding your people like that you trust that can call you out and you're not going to get offended. So me, I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, I can do all things, so there's only a few people who can really tell me like, Jenny, like you need to this is not good. And so that's like my husband and a really good friend of mine. Even if my mom tried to do that, I would get offended right away. Right. So it's like, find those people who can really speak into your life that you're not going to snap back at them, but you're going to respect how they're coming to you and invite them in to notice the signs as well.
Oh, that is such a good point, Jenny. I love how you highlighted the importance of those people in your life. That's just, and they're gold, aren't they? And I'm sure it's not easy for them to come to anyone in our lives to come to us and say, hey,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going so well for you. And you're like, what do you mean? But for them to love you enough to have those tough conversations is priceless.
Yeah,
Jenny,
exactly.
so I know you're an entrepreneur and you dream big. So how do you're already it sounds like your life is fabulously full. And I know that Imani is continuing to grow, but how do you continue to dream?
I think make time for it and also don't be afraid. So I'm an ideator. I'm like always have, whether that's within Imani, whether that's in just like how I want to serve people in coaching or whatever that looks like. I also am a professor, so I love just impacting students.
Amazing.
But I also am like, so the problem with me, I guess it's not a problem, but I'm an ideator and I'm an activator, which means like as soon as I have an idea, like tomorrow I want to do it. Like I'm like, I cannot wait. Like the world will end if I do not do this now. I'm sure you can relate. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I have to, I think for me, it's like not being afraid to dream and then shelving it.
Good.
Because I have done so many things where I have pushed it out too fast. And then it's discouraging because it's like, it doesn't go the way I planned because guess what? I didn't actually put good plans to it. I just like stepped into it. And I will say there are some things that, you just need to do it. Like as an entrepreneur, I think this is not me, but there is the type. And if it's you and you're listening, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a type that create and they want it to be so perfect, right? Before they launch it, that then they never launch it. Like, so there's a point where you do need to take a step and it's good to be actionable there. And then there's a point where it's like, okay, that was way too fast and had no extra thought to it. So I think I just give myself permission to do that. But then also permission to be patient with the dreams as well. For instance, I know this, like I was writing a book. So like I have the full manuscript down. So hopefully this year you guys will hear about it, but it's like, it's there. And I was having just a really hard end of the year. And the opposite for me, like giving myself permission to pause a project is hard. Like, so it's like I needed to work on myself, shut down a little bit and be with my family the last 2 months. And so I paused it and was like, okay, I will pick it up. Actually, I've told myself in March, like, and so I'm like, it's there. I will pick it up, look through all my edits and send it out, and start that process of getting it published. But it's okay. Like, it is okay. It will get there, and be patient with that. So I think even, just being patient with yourself and your dreams. Cause I think as dreamers, we can have a lot of different things going on. And when people look from the outside in, I remember when I was younger, people were like, you just are involved in way too much stuff. You got too many things going on. I can't keep up with you. Like, what are you focused on? And I'm like, I don't know. This is all the stuff I love, So sometimes honing in and aligning with what you have right now is good. And then being patient, but giving yourself time. I like every month, I try to give myself at least a half a day where I'm just like there's no structure to it. It's just like writing like, the most audacious goals out there. And then really like praying over that and reflecting to it and being like, which one like feels really good right now? Or like, and going with that like soul reaction of like, okay, I think this is what I need to move on. And I still have, I'll still have that list again, shelf it and then bring it back later and like look through that again. Yeah.
Oh, that is such a good strategy, Jenny. I love how you take, you've actually set aside half a day once a month, we said.
Yeah.
Oh, that just fills my heart thinking about it. I'm going to have to do that too.
Yeah. No, it's so good. If you can make the time, even if it's every other month, but it's like putting it in the calendar and having it there and not again, having those boundaries, not letting other things be scheduled over it. Cause I think we're so good at that of like, oh, that's not really important. Like I really need to have this meeting or I need to do this. And we give ourselves to other people, but we have to learn how to also give ourselves to ourselves where we can learn and reflect and listen to what's going on there too.
Oh, Jenny, you have just shared so much gold over what it takes to start a dream and like the importance, some strategies to not burn out and to keep the passion alive and to dream bigger. Like it's just been full of gold. I just thank you so much. I know that there'll be some people who would love to connect with you. So what's the best way to connect with you or follow along with what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to see more behind the scenes, Jenny Nuccio, and the best way to reach me or see me on Instagram or jennynuccio.com. And then Imani Collective is, you can go to imanicollective.com, see what we're up to there. And then I do coaching and consulting on the side, but all that can be, found on my website, and things like that. But yeah, come follow, ask questions. I'm always here to help in any way.
And you are so approachable and just so warm. So yeah, really do connect and reach out to Jenny, especially if this is really something's really niggling at your heart and you have a dream that you're wanting to kind of walk out as well. She'd be brilliant at coaching. So Jenny, thank you so much for coming. And I know you're really just starting your day over in Kenya, aren't you?
Yeah. It's like 10 here. So just starting. So I was in the office, ran here, and it's been a pleasure to, be a part of it. And I hope, people are really encouraged to know that especially if you just feel stuck right now, just know, you'll get there. Just take time, a few deep breaths, and you'll look back one day and be like, oh, okay, I understand the reason for that season. So, it was just, it's always so fun to chat with you. So,
oh, thank you, beauty. I so appreciate you.
Thanks for joining me on Brave with Lisa. I hope that it has inspired or impacted you in a small or large way. Feel free to comment, to subscribe, and share with some friends. And please join us next week on another conversation we will have here on this channel on Brave with Lisa.